It's 7 in the morning and Margaret is standing at her kitchen counter, staring at a small device in her hand. She pricks her finger, waits those 5 long seconds and sighs when the number pops up. Too high. Again. She glances at the bowl of grapes on her table, the same grapes her granddaughter brought over last weekend, and hesitates. Can she even eat fruit anymore? Is sugar just sugar no matter where it comes from? If you've ever stood in that same spot, wondering whether something as simple and beautiful as fruit is now your enemy, I want you to take a breath with me. Because today we're going to walk through something that surprised even me when I first started studying it closely. Not every fruit spikes your blood sugar. In fact, there are specific fruits that can actually help your body manage glucose more efficiently, calm inflammation, and support the very systems that keep you steady day to day. By the end of this video you'll know exactly which 3 fruits deserve a place on your plate, how much to eat, when to eat them, and why they work at a level deeper than most people ever explain. And I'll share the real story of a patient whose numbers, and whose mood, changed in a way she never expected. So stay with me because this next part might change how you look at your fruit bowl forever. Let's talk for a moment about why blood sugar becomes harder to manage as we get older, because understanding the why makes the how so much easier to follow. As we age, our muscle cells naturally become a little less sensitive to insulin, the hormone that ushers sugar out of the bloodstream and into our cells for energy. This is sometimes called insulin resistance, and it isn't a personal failure. It's simply part of how the body shifts over time. On top of that, many of us lose a bit of muscle mass with age, and since muscle is one of the biggest storage tanks for glucose, less muscle can mean sugar lingers in the blood longer than it used to. There's also the pancreas to consider. The beta cells inside it, responsible for producing insulin, can become a little slower to respond after years of use, especially if diet, stress, or sleep have been inconsistent. Layer on top of that the natural rise in inflammation that tends to come with age, often called inflammaging by researchers, and you start to see why blood sugar control feels like a moving target for so many people over 60. Here's the encouraging part. Researchers at institutions including Harvard School of Public Health and the Mayo Clinic have spent years studying how specific plant compounds, fiber, polyphenol, and antioxidants found richly in certain fruits, can directly support insulin sensitivity and slow the rate at which sugar enters the bloodstream. This isn't about willpower. It's about giving your body the right tools. You're not alone in this, and there is a lot, genuinely a lot, we can still do. Before we go deeper, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this kind of science-backed health guidance, make sure you subscribe to Health Signal. This way you'll never miss the proven tips and inspiring real-life stories that can truly make a difference in your health journey. Now, let's get into the fruits themselves because I promise you, the first one on this list surprised even some of my colleagues. Picture a small, deep blue fruit, barely bigger than a pea, that's been quietly gaining attention in diabetes research circles for years. I'm talking about blueberries, and specifically the wild and cultivated varieties packed with a compound called anthocyanin, the pigment responsible for that rich blue-purple color. This is where I want to tell you about Margaret, the woman we met at the very beginning, standing at her kitchen counter. Margaret was 68, retired after decades as a schoolteacher, and she developed what she called her nighttime sweet tooth, a habit of reaching for cookies or ice cream around 8 or 9 in the evening, almost like a reward for making it through the day. Her fasting blood sugar readings had been creeping upward for months, hovering in a range that worried both of us. She loved fruit but had convinced herself that anything sweet, including berries, was off the table. When Margaret came to see me, we didn't overhaul her entire diet overnight. That's rarely sustainable and it rarely lasts. Instead, we made one small, specific swap. In place of her evening treat, she began having a half cup of fresh or frozen blueberries with a small spoonful of plain Greek yogurt. That's it. That was the entire change we started with. Here's why that swap matters physiologically. Blueberries carry a relatively low glycemic index, generally falling in the low to moderate range, which means the sugar they contain, mostly fructose, enters the bloodstream gradually rather than in a sudden rush. But the real magic is in the anthocyanins. Research published through nutrition science journals and reviewed by teams connected to Harvard's nutrition department has found that anthocyanins can improve how muscle and fat cells respond to insulin, essentially helping the insulin key fit more smoothly into the cell's lock. Some clinical studies involving adults with insulin resistance have observed measurable improvements in fasting glucose and insulin sensitivity markers after consistent daily blueberry consumption over several weeks. There's also fiber to consider. A single cup of blueberries provides a meaningful dose of soluble fiber, which forms a gel-like substance in the digestive tract that slows the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. And blueberries are rich in vitamin C and vitamin K, along with manganese, all of which support the antioxidant defenses that help protect blood vessels from the kind of oxidative stress that elevated blood sugar can cause over time. For Margaret, the change wasn't dramatic in the first week. It rarely is, and I always tell my patients that anyone promising overnight results isn't being honest with you. But by week 6, her fasting glucose readings had dropped into a noticeably steadier range, and just as importantly, she told me she no longer felt that late evening crash and cravings cycle that used to leave her reaching for sugary snacks. She'd found something that satisfied her sweet tooth while actually working with her body instead of against it. I'll come back to Margaret's story again in a few minutes, because her progress continued in a way that ties beautifully into our next fruit. But for now, the emotional takeaway here is simple. Something as small as a half cup of blueberries chosen with intention can become a quiet, steady ally in your daily routine, proof that managing blood sugar doesn't always require giving up the things that bring you joy. Now let's move to the second fruit, and this one might be sitting in your kitchen right now without you realizing its full potential. I'm talking about apples, specifically apples eaten with the skin on. There's a reason the old saying about apples has stuck around for generations, and modern research is starting to explain exactly why. Apples are rich in a specific type of soluble fiber called pectin, and pectin behaves almost like a sponge in your digestive system. It slows gastric emptying, meaning food, and the sugar within it, moves through your stomach and into your bloodstream more gradually. Studies examining fiber intake and glycemic response, including work reviewed by researchers affiliated with the Mayo Clinic's nutrition programs, have consistently shown that higher soluble fiber intake correlates with more stable post-meal blood sugar readings in adults with insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. But apples offer something beyond fiber. Their skin is especially rich in a compound called quercetin, a flavonoid that has been studied for its role in reducing inflammation and supporting healthier blood vessel function. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the quiet contributors to insulin resistance, and some research suggests that quercetin may help interrupt some of the cellular pathways that drive this inflammatory response. In simple terms, it's like turning down the background static that makes it harder for your cells to hear insulin's signal properly. There's also an interesting finding worth mentioning. Some research has explored how the acetic acid-related compounds and polyphenol in apples may modestly slow the activity of certain enzymes responsible for breaking down starches into sugar during digestion. This doesn't mean apples eliminate sugar spikes entirely, but it does suggest they blunt them more gently than many other common snacks. This is where Margaret's story comes back in. A few weeks after we introduced blueberries into her evening routine, we added one more piece to her plan. A small apple eaten whole with the skin on, as her mid-afternoon snack instead of crackers or a granola bar. This was the time of day she used to feel her energy dip hardest, and often reached for something quick and processed. By her third month of following this simple two-fruit approach alongside her regular medication routine and her doctor's guidance, Margaret's most recent lab work showed her overall glucose control had improved to a degree that genuinely surprised her physician. She told me with a bit of a laugh that she felt like she'd tricked her cravings into becoming healthy habits. The emotional heart of this is worth sitting with for a moment. Margaret didn't need a complicated meal plan or an expensive supplement. She needed 2 ordinary fruits, used with intention and consistency, and enough patience to let her body respond in its own time. Now for our third fruit, I want you to picture something bright, fragrant, and a little tangy, the kind of fruit that can make an entire room smell like sunshine the moment you peel it. I'm talking about citrus fruits, particularly grapefruit and oranges, though the principles here extend to lemons and limes as well. Citrus fruits are well known for their vitamin C content, but their real value for blood sugar management lies in a lesser-known compound called naringenin, found predominantly in grapefruit, along with hesperidin, abundant in oranges. Research teams, including groups connected with the National Institutes of Health, have studied naringenin's effects on liver metabolism and found that it may help regulate how the liver processes fats and sugars, potentially reducing the amount of glucose the liver releases into the bloodstream between meals. This matters because a significant portion of elevated fasting blood sugar, especially the kind measured first thing in the morning, actually comes from the liver's own glucose production overnight, not just from what we eat. Citrus fruits also carry a notably low glycemic load when eaten whole, largely because of their fiber and water content working together to slow digestion. An orange, for example, is roughly 80% water, and its pulp is laced with soluble fiber that, much like the pectin in apples, tempers how quickly its natural sugars reach the bloodstream. Some clinical observations have noted that regular citrus consumption is associated with improved markers of insulin sensitivity and healthier lipid profiles over time, particularly when citrus replaces more processed, sugar-dense snacks in the diet. There's an emotional layer to citrus fruits too, one that I think gets overlooked in most nutrition conversations. The bright scent, the vivid color, the burst of flavor. These small sensory pleasures matter, especially for those of us managing a chronic condition that can sometimes feel restrictive or joyless. Choosing an orange instead of a candy bar isn't just a metabolic decision. It's a small act of self-respect, a way of saying, I deserve something that tastes wonderful and takes care of me at the same time. There's one more detail about citrus worth sharing, because it often gets left out of these conversations. The white, spongy layer just beneath the peel, the part most of us peel away and toss without a second thought, actually contains a concentrated dose of those same flavonoids we just talked about. Leaving a little of that white pith intact when you eat an orange, rather than removing every trace of it, can boost the fiber and hesperidin content of what you're eating. It's a small habit, almost unnoticeable, but it's exactly the kind of detail that adds up over months and years of consistent choices. I also want to gently address a question I hear often in my practice. Doesn't fruit still have natural sugar, even if it's healthier sugar? The honest answer is yes, fruit does contain natural sugars. But the presence of sugar alone doesn't tell the whole story. What matters most for blood sugar control is the speed at which that sugar enters your bloodstream, and how your body is equipped to handle it once it arrives. A candy bar delivers a fast, concentrated hit of sugar with almost nothing to slow it down. A whole apple, an orange, or a handful of blueberries delivers a much smaller, much slower release, wrapped in fiber, water, and protective plant compounds that actively support the very systems responsible for keeping your glucose steady. That distinction changes everything. So here is where we bring it all together. 3 fruits: blueberries with their anthocyanins gently improving insulin sensitivity, apples with their pectin and quercetin slowing sugar absorption and calming inflammation, and citrus fruits with their naringenin and hesperidin helping regulate the liver's glucose output. 3 different mechanisms working from 3 different angles, all pointing toward the same goal: a steadier, calmer blood sugar rhythm throughout your day. Now let's talk about how to actually bring this into your daily life, because information without application doesn't help anyone. Start with blueberries. Aim for a half cup to a full cup of fresh or frozen blueberries a day, ideally paired with a small source of protein like plain Greek yogurt, a handful of nuts, or a slice of cheese. Protein and fat slow digestion even further, which means even less of a blood sugar spike. Frozen blueberries are just as nutritionally valuable as fresh ones, and they're often more affordable and easier to keep on hand. Simply thaw a portion the night before, or add them frozen straight into yogurt or oatmeal. For apples, choose 1 small to medium apple per day, always eating the skin, since that's where much of the fiber and quercetin is concentrated. A great time to enjoy it is mid-morning or mid-afternoon, exactly when energy dips tend to strike and cravings feel strongest. If you have sensitive teeth or find whole apples difficult to eat, slicing them thin and pairing them with a tablespoon of natural almond butter works beautifully and adds a bit of healthy fat to slow things down even further. For citrus, aim for 1 whole orange or half a grapefruit if that suits your taste, most days of the week. It's worth noting that grapefruit can interact with certain medications, so if you're on prescription drugs, especially for cholesterol or blood pressure, please check with your doctor or pharmacist before making grapefruit a regular habit. Oranges and other citrus fruits are a safe alternative if that's a concern for you. Try having your citrus fruit earlier in the day, perhaps at breakfast, since it can offer a refreshing, energizing start. Timing matters more than most people realize. Eating fruit alongside or right after a meal, rather than on a completely empty stomach, can further blunt any rise in blood sugar, because the other foods in your meal, especially protein and healthy fats, slow digestion even more. If you're someone who takes blood sugar medication, pay attention to how your body responds in the first couple of weeks of any change, and keep your doctor informed, since your dosage may eventually need to be reviewed as your control improves. Storage is simple but worth mentioning. Keep apples and citrus fruits in the refrigerator to extend their freshness and preserve their vitamin content, and store blueberries in a breathable container lined with a paper towel to absorb excess moisture, which helps prevent mold and keeps them fresh for up to 2 weeks. If you buy in bulk, portion your blueberries into small freezer bags right away, so you always have a ready-to-use serving without needing to measure each time. For those who want alternatives or variety, a short walk after meals, even just 10 to 15 minutes, has been shown in multiple studies to meaningfully lower post-meal blood sugar spikes, and it pairs beautifully with the dietary changes we've discussed today. Staying hydrated with water throughout the day also supports your kidneys in helping regulate excess glucose, and prioritizing consistent, quality sleep plays a quiet but powerful role in insulin sensitivity as well. A few general guidelines apply across all three. Always choose whole fruit over juice, since juicing removes the fiber that does so much of the protective work we've talked about today. Portion size matters. Even healthy fruits can raise blood sugar if eaten in very large quantities all at once, so spacing them throughout the day, rather than eating them all in one sitting, tends to work best. And if you enjoy tracking your numbers, this can be a wonderful way to see in real time how your body responds to these specific changes. It can be incredibly motivating to watch your own data confirm what the research suggests. If fresh fruit isn't always available, frozen options retain nearly all of their nutritional value and can be a wonderful budget-friendly staple to keep stocked. And if you're looking to add variety, other fruits that share similar properties include cherries, pears, kiwi, and strawberries, all lower on the glycemic index and rich in the same kinds of fiber and polyphenol we've discussed today. As we close today, I want you to remember something important. It's never too late to make a change that supports your health, no matter your age, no matter how long you've been managing this condition, and no matter how many times you've tried something before and felt it didn't stick. Margaret didn't transform her health overnight, and she didn't do it perfectly. She simply made small, informed choices, gave her body time to respond, and stayed consistent. That's genuinely all it takes to start. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Have you tried adding any of these fruits into your routine? What's your favorite way to enjoy them? Or if you're just starting out, which of these three feels like the easiest place to begin? Your experience might be exactly the encouragement someone else watching needs to hear today. If this video gave you something valuable, a thumbs up helps this reach more people who need it, and sharing it with a friend or family member managing their own blood sugar could genuinely make a difference in their day. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Health Signal so you never miss the next piece of research-backed guidance we bring you. Take care of yourself, be patient with your progress, and I'll see you in the next video.